obligation on the Department of Justice has been long-standing as a result of the amendment of the Maintenance Act in 2015. This amendment brought into basically gave the department an obligation to ensure that once an enforcement order is issued, our officials at court must forward the names and details of the persons against whom the enforcement order has been granted to service providers or credit providers or credit bureaus. So this provision basically came into effect in 2019, but because of lack of capacity within the department, it was delayed. So as we established this directorate, it became very critical that we start on ensuring that we implement this obligation, because there are high levels of lack of compliance with initial maintenance order. So it is this particular challenge that we have, number one. Secondly, in South Africa, we've got more than 7,000 credit providers and more than 49 credit bureaus. So it would be very difficult for court officials to know which credit bureau or service provider to send these details to. So as we did a national maintenance working session in reflecting on the key issues that are facing us in terms of enforcing this obligation, we had the opportunity of inviting Credit Profile Bureau as well as Social Justice Foundation to just tell us how they actually understand this provision and how we can work together. As a result, we actually formed a partnership that will help us streamline the forwarding of the details. It was quite critical that we mainstream or we streamline how the department forwards this data, because it's sensitive data which relates to really personal profiles of people.
All right, let's get more reaction. We speak to Executive Director of Social Justice Foundation, Anneke Greyvenstein, for more. Very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time, Anneke. South Africa has really taken some unprecedented steps to enforce child maintenance payments. How much of a turning point does this move make in the child support enforcement?
Well, as far as we know, it's the first in the world that we integrate maintenance obligations into the credit industry environment. We've lobbied for legislation for 18 years to change, and this will really make a big difference in the lives of our children and single parents in South Africa, and eventually worldwide.
Lobbying for that amount of time is really just showing of how imperative it was to reach this point. And of course, there have been case studies that have led to this point and really pushing for this act to be enforced. We've seen children being neglected by parents, which was has very often had a massive effect on the children. What prompted some of the horror stories that have prompted this act?
The very big need we saw in 2007 already, where we assisted more than 10,000 people in a 2-year period with arrear maintenance. And it was just implementing the act that was available at that stage. And that's why we needed to do lobbying and get more legislation in place. And this is a milestone moment for single parents and children in South Africa, enhancing their wellness, their education, providing financial stability. And I believe in 5 years' time, we will definitely see that the default rate of 70% within the first 2 years has changed substantially.
What would you say would be some of the reasons that people are simply not bothering to look after their children and ensure that they are being provided for?
There's many reasons why parents decide to not pay maintenance. A lot of them has been linked to emotional reasons. As mediators, we see that on a daily basis. And that's one of the reasons why we need to also get the credit industry involved, because of economic reasons. Parents don't pay maintenance because they lose their work, or they relocate and they start a new family. There's various reasons. And that's why each and every case is unique. And that's why for 18 years, we've been asking families, come to mediation, approach the courts, we can help you. That's why we are there.
So let's talk a little bit about the process. At what point can parents now lay a criminal charge against a person who is obliged to pay maintenance in terms, perhaps a court order?
If parents already have a court order within 10 days after the payment was due, parents can go to a court, approach a court and lay a claim for arrear maintenance. And also, if maintenance has been in arrears, parents can claim that maintenance back for 30 years. So parents can go back to court, or they can approach the Social Justice Foundation for assistance, and they can claim the arrear maintenance, because that maintenance does not belong to the parents. It belongs to the children for which the order was granted.
We have often, in some instances, heard some of the other reasons why a partner wouldn't pay their maintenance. I mean, you make mention of emotional reasons for one, and maybe perhaps a miscommunication on the other end, when one parent may believe that the money is being misspent or not well spent or allocated to the child. What would happen in such an instance? Should you find that that is the case, and the blacklisting has already, is already underway?
Mediation is always our first point of departure. And also, once you've approached the court, we should look at the specific scenario around what is the maintenance needs, and how can we actually structure the maintenance payments specifically for that family. Mm-hmm. Let's take a simple example. Unique solutions, the educational expenses. The parent can pay the educational expenses directly to the service provider. The medical expenses can be paid directly to the service provider. So there's a lot of unique solutions that you can work with when you go for mediation, or when you look at maintenance obligations and the living expenses of minors. Parents are just not aware of how the calculation should be made, because our act is clear. It's proportionately according to the means, and both parents are responsible to look after their children, not only one.
So as you see this through, what are you hoping to see in terms of improvement with this process, and just having parents, take up responsibility and ensure that their children are well taken care of?
Apart from the fact that we hold parents accountable, mm-hmm. And it's their first responsibility. It's not only the state's, because if parents do not look after their children, the next port of call is the state, because the government then have to look after the children. And it's not the government's responsibility to look after the children. The government did not decide to have that child. it's a culture of responsibility and accountability that we would like to install in our families in South Africa and eventually worldwide. Because family responsibilities, we've seen many studies around parents and responsibilities and family foundations, and our children are our next generation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we should look after them.
Thank you so much. Thanks for speaking to us this evening. Executive Director of Social Justice Foundation, Anneke Greyvenstein, really just speaking about the culture of accountability and responsibility as the act is being enforced.